3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
There is no other institution that has the ability, uniquely,
without a heritage, every generation starts over.
Ask not
to remind the current regime
what your country.
We, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do.
All action.
to get back in their box and stay there.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
From the Heritage Foundation, this is Heritage Explains.
The road to the ballot box is not always an easy one. For most of us in the United States, voting is just another task, albeit an extremely important one, to be squeezed into a busy schedule. But at different times in history, Americans have had to struggle to cast their ballot. In the Jim Crow era, Black Americans faced a variety of artificial barriers to exercise their right to vote, including poll taxes, literacy tests, and the threat of violence. During the Second World War, getting ballots to soldiers stationed overseas on time, securely, and in compliance with election law was a logistical nightmare. During the COVID-19 pandemic, voters faced widespread concern about the security of mass mail-in voting. Most recently, Hurricanes Helene and Milton have caused devastation across several states in the American Southeast, most notably in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. With the 2024 election only a few weeks away, many are concerned about whether these voters will have the ability to be heard this cycle. The Heritage Foundation's manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative and senior legal fellow Hans von Spakovsky joins the podcast to explain. Hans von Spakovsky, welcome back to Heritage Explains.
Thanks for having me back.
We are facing, in the next couple of weeks, of course, a national presidential election. And within the last few weeks, we had some severe hurricanes hit the southern part of the United States. And there have been some concerns about some of the electorate there being able to vote as they should be able to. Of course, we care a lot about election integrity here at the Heritage Foundation. So can you tell us a little bit about the status of those folks down in North Carolina and Florida? What is the election integrity landscape looking like down there?
Well, North Carolina, for example, the parts of the state affected are probably about 1/5 of the vote in the state. So it's a large number of people. In Georgia, it's about 55 counties. North Carolina election officials have already acted. The state legislature passed an emergency bill last week. It was signed into law by the governor. And it does everything from relax some of the rules regarding elections to telling local election officials that if they need to change a polling place because it's been damaged or destroyed, they can do that as long as there's a bipartisan agreement among local folks without having to go to the state and get the state election board to approve it. That's an important thing because right now speed obviously is of the essence. They've also relaxed their usual rules, which say that if you're going to work as an election official in a county, or you're going to be a poll watcher in a county, you have to be a resident of that county. And given all the damage there, including people leaving their homes, they're now saying, no, election officials from other parts of the state and people who are registered voters from other parts of states can come in and work. All of that's really important. The biggest issue, Mark, is going to be the fact that so many people vote by mail these days. And the Postal Service announced that it had suspended mail service in some parts of the affected areas. And yeah, they're trying to get that back, but they're not quite sure when they're going to get full mail service back. So for people who requested an absentee ballot, maybe they got it, maybe they mailed it in. One, if they never got it, they need to check with election officials. Was it sent out to them? If not, they may want to go vote early instead. And if they actually got an absentee ballot and they mailed it, but election officials haven't gotten it, again, they may have a potential problem. And again, they should check with their county election officials on what's the status of their absentee ballot. Did election officials get it? Because it might have been lost, like so many other things were in the storm.
So all things considered, are you reasonably happy with, you think that most people will be able to cast their ballot as they plan to before this happened?
Well, I hope so. I mean, the one thing I haven't seen done yet, which I think needs to be done, is if election officials have done a physical survey of their polling sites, the ones that are supposed to be open on Election Day, and they already know which ones were too damaged to use, they need to make that public. And they need to immediately come up with substitute places for that. Also, to the extent that polling places have been destroyed, they need probably more early voting sites in official government buildings that are still intact and where they haven't had problems to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to vote. It's pretty tough if you've lost your home. You're having problems getting power, cell phone service, food, water to be focusing on voting too. And election officials need to do everything they can to make sure that's available for people. So
obviously, one of the most contentious components of the 2020 election was issues around election integrity and uncertainty around the election.
Right.
And of course, we at Heritage take that very, very seriously. As you look at 2024 unfolding, do you have similar concerns for this election? Do you feel better? What is your take?
What I would tell people is that overall, we're in better shape. We're in better shape in 2024 than 2020 because a number of states passed reforms to try to address some of the vulnerabilities they have in the system. But look, it all depends on what state you're in, unfortunately. Places like Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, all of them passed good reforms. Georgia, for example, extended its voter ID law. They have had a very good one in place for years, but it only applied to in-person voting. Now applies to absentee balloting too. That's important given how many people today vote through the mail using absentee ballots, even though I wouldn't want to do that. It's just, if I won the lottery, I certainly wouldn't put my ticket in the mail, and I'd rather vote in person than through the mail. But that issue aside, many states have improved things. Now, does that mean we have a perfect system now? No. And there are a couple of states where they not only haven't fixed things, but they've gone downhill. Michigan is an unfortunate example of that. If folks want to know what it's like in their state, easy way to do that is go to the heritage.org website and check our election integrity scorecard. And there they can pull up their state and get our complete analysis based on 50 best practices recommendations on how well or how badly their state's doing.
One of the things that's been in the political discourse recently has been the conversation about illegal aliens being registered to vote by the government at different times, and now efforts to remove illegal aliens from the voter rolls. There was a high-profile case in Virginia recently. Can you talk about some of that?
Sure. Look, a number of states are finally doing what they should be doing, and some of the recommendations that we at Heritage have made. They've been checking voter registration records against other state databases like DMV records, state welfare agency records. And through that, they have found aliens on the voter rolls. Texas just removed 6,500, Virginia 6,300, Alabama over 3,000. South Dakota also has removed aliens they have found. They can and should be doing that. And voters should all approve that. I don't think anybody wants aliens to vote, with the exception of the Merrick Garland, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden Justice Department, which has now sued not only Virginia, but also Alabama, saying that they are barred by this provision in federal law from removing aliens from the rolls. They're wrong. I think this is a meritless lawsuit. I think it's an abuse of their power, but that's something the states are going to have to fight.
Hans von Spakovsky, thank you so much for joining us on Heritage Explains.
Well, thanks for having me, and to everybody out there, be sure and vote.
Thank you to Hans von Spakovsky for his contribution to today's episode. You can find more by Hans at heritage.org. And you can follow him on X at @HvonSpakovsky. You can find the Heritage Election Integrity Scorecard by going to heritage.org/election scorecard. And of course, thank you to you for listening to Heritage Explains. As always, you can reach out to us with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions at heritageexplains@heritage.org. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Heritage Explains is written and produced by Mark Gagne, Lauren Evans, and John Popp.